Welcome to this deep dive, everybody. Today, we're going to be tackling the crazy world of startups, and we've got a heck of a guide for this one.
We're talking Silicon Valley legend Mark Andreessen and diving deep into his personal blog,
And he gets real, let me tell you. Like, he jumps right in and tells you why you shouldn't do a startup.
which, you expect the usual warnings about long hours or tough investors, but he goes deeper, comparing it to an emotional roller coaster.
Not just any roller coaster, though, right?
Right, not your average ups and downs.
Yeah.
We're talking my best idea ever highs,
Yeah.
followed by did I make a huge mistake, lows, and the kicker.
He says even the most, even-keeled founders feel this way. So what is it about startups that's so intense?
Well, unlike other fields, startups are built on uncertainty. Andreessen has this great analogy of a risk onion. Every layer you peel back, there's a new potential problem.
Okay, so, what kind of layers are we talking here? He mentions financing risk. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Will you actually get the money?
Mm.
And then there's technology risk, can you actually build the thing?
And will it actually work the way you think it will? Which, don't forget market risk, possibly the biggest one.
Yeah, will anyone actually want this thing?
Exactly.
He goes on to list more timing risk. Are you too early, too late, or are you magically right on time? And distribution.
Even if you build it, how do you get it to people?
It's a lot, right?
It's enough to make anyone sweat a little.
So you've ridden that emotional roller coaster, peeled back those layers of risk, but now you need money, cold, hard cash.
And Andreessen really knows how tough it can be to secure funding. He actually dedicates a whole section to dealing with no from VCs.
Oh, those rejections sting. World-ending kind of sting. But he gives some good advice on how to handle it. Don't just freak out over one no.
Right. Look at the bigger picture. What's the whole investment climate looking like?
He makes this point, right? A no in the middle of the dot-com bubble means something totally different than a no when everyone's freaking out after the bubble bursts.
Totally. So one rejection doesn't necessarily mean your idea is garbage.
Just maybe needs some adjustments.
Exactly. He calls it retooling your plan. Basically, how can you make your startup less risky in the eyes of those VCs?
Okay, so break that down for us. What are these risk categories they're looking at?
Well, there's market risk, right? Will people actually want this? Is there a real need?
Makes sense.
Mm.
If not, it's a risky bet for them.
Totally. Then there's distribution risk, which is huge. Even with the best product, can you get it into people's hands?
True, because even if it's revolutionary, if no one can get it, what's the point?
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget about the technology itself. Can you actually build this thing you're promising? Is the tech even feasible?
And can you build it within a reasonable budget and time frame? Because those things matter too.
Absolutely. And lastly, there's the financing risk, which kind of ties it all together.
Right. Can you get enough money to make all of this happen in the first place?
Right. Because a brilliant idea without funding is just that, an idea.
So these are the risk areas VCs are always thinking about, right?
All the time.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's not just for people pitching to VCs. These categories, they're relevant to anything new you're trying, whether it's a side gig, a project at work, even a personal goal.
Yeah, it's about really looking at those potential problems early on.
So you can fix them. Maybe that means tweaking the product. Maybe it's finding the right partner. Maybe it's being real about your budget.
And Andreessen isn't just about doom and gloom either. He also talks about navigating big companies, which he calls, get this, the Moby Dick problem.
The Moby Dick problem. I gotta hear this.
We're going to dive into his analogy of big companies as Moby Dick, and trust me, it's going to be good. Okay, so big companies, they're Moby Dick. How does that even work?
So picture this. You're in a tiny little fishing boat, right? But you're fast, you're nimble, and you've got this amazing new harpoon. You think it's going to change everything.
Okay, I'm with you.
Then you see it, Moby Dick, this massive giant company.
And you're like, if I can just land this deal.
Exactly. My harpoon, their resources, we're going to be rich. But
Last catch. Really?
Moby Dick doesn't care about your harpoon.
Oh.
He's got his own thing going on. Internal stuff, old grudges. You're just a little boat to him.
So you're out there pitching your heart out and crickets.
Maybe. Or worse, they steal your idea and crush you.
Uh,
They've got the resources, right?
Yikes. So what's the move then? No more working with big companies.
Not necessarily. Andreessen's point is be realistic. Big companies, they move slow, they're complicated, and their decisions, who knows?
It's like that saying, right? Nobody ever got fired for choosing IBM.
Exactly. It's safer for them to go with what they know. So, point is, go in with your eyes open. Don't get blinded by the big name.
Don't lose sight of your own goals in the process. Love it. Okay, so we've talked about funding. We've talked about these Moby Dick companies. Now we got to talk about building the team.
Ah, the team. And this is interesting. Andreessen has some counterintuitive advice here.
Hit me.
He says, especially early on, the most important thing, product market fit.
Meaning what? Exactly. I feel like I hear that term everywhere.
He means finding that sweet spot where your product or service,
Yeah.
if it's a real need in the market, like perfectly.
Okay, but hold on. What about that whole the team is everything thing? How does that fit in?
A great team is important for long-term success, for sure. But what Andreessen is saying is even the best team can't save a bad product. It's like, imagine a team of amazing chefs.
Okay, I'm imagining like Michelin star chefs.
The best. But they're making ketchup popsicles.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
It doesn't matter how talented they are.
Right? If no one wants ketchup popsicles, no one wants ketchup popsicles.
Exactly. So before you even think about the team, you got to make sure you're building something people actually want.
Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for failure from the get-go.
Right. Now, once you have that product market fit, building the right team, that becomes absolutely essential.
And then it's smooth sailing from there.
Not quite. Even Andreessen admits, even with the best hiring process, you're going to make mistakes.
Happens to the best of us.
And his advice, be quick about it.
Yeah.
Don't let a bad hire drag down the whole team, recognize it's not working, and make a change.
Protect the company as a whole.
Exactly.
So we've covered a lot today. The emotional roller coaster, the funding craziness, these giant Moby Dick companies, building the team. It makes you wonder, how does this all fit into, like, your whole career?
That's where this portfolio approach comes in. He talks about thinking of each job, each project, like an investment.
So there's risk, there's potential payoff.
You got it. Early on, you have less to lose, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it makes sense to take bigger risks, go for those high-reward opportunities.
Like joining a brand new startup.
Sure.
Or moving across the country for that dream job.
Exactly. But later on, maybe you have a family, a mortgage, your priorities change.
You want a little more stability.
Exactly. It's not about avoiding risk completely. It's about knowing how much risk you're comfortable with at different points in your life.
And knowing that what feels risky at 22 might feel totally different at 42.
Completely. And vice versa.
Okay.
Now, let's talk about skills, because you need the right tools in your tool belt to thrive in this whole startup world. And Andreessen's got some interesting thoughts on education.
Oh, does he ever? He is not afraid to share his opinions. So lay it on me. What does he think about all these follow your passion degrees?
He's skeptical, especially for undergrad. He thinks a little pragmatism goes a long way. A technical degree, computer science, engineering, that's like your solid, dependable stock.
It's a good foundation.
Right. Then, once you have that, you can diversify your portfolio with other skills.
What kind of skills are we talking about here?
Communication is huge EE. Being able to get your ideas across clearly, whether it's writing or speaking, that's crucial no matter what you do.
Can't argue with that. What else?
Learning how to manage people well is key, even if you're not a manager yet. And here's a curveball. Sales.
Sales.
He's serious. Andreessen says even if you never see yourself in a traditional sales role, understanding how to persuade, to influence, to close a deal, that's invaluable in any field.
So build that strong technical base, but don't forget those other skills that make you well-rounded. Makes sense. Okay, last question. How does Andreessen actually do it all? How does he stay productive with all of this going on?
You ready for this? He doesn't use a schedule.
Wait, what? No schedule? How is that even possible?
He's all about prioritizing what really matters and structuring his day around that. Instead of letting a calendar control him, he creates space for deep work.
That takes serious discipline. Any other productivity hacks he's into?
He's big on lists. He has a to-do list, obviously, but then also a watch list for things to keep an eye on, and a later list for things that aren't urgent, but he doesn't want to forget about.
Oh, that's smart. I need to try that.
It's a good system. And get this, he only checks email twice a day.
Twice a day. My brain can barely comprehend that.
It's about setting boundaries,
Yeah.
right? Not letting the constant influx of messages control your entire day.
I love it. Okay, so we've gone through the emotional ringer that is the startup world today. We've navigated funding, we've dodged those Moby Dick companies, built our teams. But here's the thing, the lessons from Andreessen, they apply to way more than just startups, right?
Absolutely. This is about having a mindset of always learning, taking smart risks, being resourceful. Those skills, they're valuable no matter where you end up.
It's about building a career and a life that's resilient, adaptable, something that can evolve as you do.
Exactly. So as you go out into the world, here's something to think about. What's one risk you've been putting off? One opportunity you're maybe missing out on because of fear or doubt or just plain inertia?
And with that question hanging in the air, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. We've only scratched the surface of Andreessen's insights, so we definitely encourage you to check out his work for yourself.
There's a ton of great stuff in there, that's for sure.
As always, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, keep pushing your own boundaries.